My brother emptied my bank accounts and vanished to Dubai with his girlfriend, leaving me with absolutely nothing. I was heartbroken and ready to give up until my 10-year-old daughter Zuri looked up from her iPad and said, "Mom, do not worry, I handled it." 2 days later, my brother called me screaming from a jail cell, begging for mercy. But by then, it was too late. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to stand up to family who mistook your kindness for weakness. My name is Monique, and at 34 years old, I thought I had built a fortress around my life. I am a forensic financial analyst. I catch thieves for a living. I track down hidden assets for divorce lawyers and expose corporate embezzlers. But I never expected the thief to be sleeping in my guest room. It was a Tuesday morning at Grady Memorial Hospital in Atlanta. The air smelled of antiseptic and stale coffee. My mother Beatrice was prepped and ready for a double bypass heart surgery. It was a procedure I had spent 3 years saving for, because her insurance refused to cover the specific specialist she needed. I stood at the billing counter, my hand trembling slightly as I handed over my platinum debit card. The total upfront cost was $42,000. It was a lot of money, but I had it. I had worked 80-hour weeks staring at spreadsheets until my eyes burned to make sure I had it. The receptionist, a young woman with tired eyes, swiped the card. She waited. I waited. A sharp buzz cut through the silence. Declined. She looked at the screen and then back at me. "Try it again," I said, forcing a smile. "It is probably just a chip error. I have traveled recently, so the bank might have flagged it for security." She nodded and swiped again. This time she typed in the numbers manually. Buzz, declined, insufficient funds. The words felt like a physical slap. My stomach dropped through the floor. "That is impossible," I said, my voice rising. "There is $185,000 in that account. Try it again." "Ma'am," the receptionist said, her voice dropping to that condescending whisper people use when they think you are broke. "The system says zero, not just insufficient. Zero balance." I pulled out my phone, my fingers fumbling as I opened my banking app. Face ID recognized me. The little loading circle spun for an eternity, and then the numbers appeared. Checking zero, savings zero, Zuri's college fund zero. Even my emergency retirement fund was wiped clean. I stared at the screen, unable to breathe. And then a text message notification slid down from the top of my screen. It was from Dante, my younger brother. "Sorry, Mo. This investment opportunity could not wait. Jessica said you were playing it too safe with that money sitting there rotting. We need the capital to launch our brand. I will pay you back double next week. Do not try to find us. We are going off the grid to focus. Love you, sis." The room spun. I grabbed the counter to steady myself. Dante. My 30-year-old brother, who I had let crash on my couch for 6 months because he said he was getting back on his feet. He had not just borrowed money, he had taken everything. I did not scream. I did not faint. I ran. I sprinted down the hallway to room 304, where my mother was waiting for surgery. I burst through the door, expecting to find her panicked. I needed to tell her that Dante had robbed us, that we had to call the police immediately. "Mom," I gasped, fighting for breath. "Dante." He took the money. He emptied the accounts. The surgery. We cannot pay for the surgery. My mother Beatrice was sitting up in bed, flipping through a magazine. She did not look shocked. She did not look angry. She looked relieved. "Oh, stop making a scene, Monique," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "Dante called me. He explained everything." "He explained everything," I repeated, my brain failing to comprehend her reaction. "Mom, he stole almost $200,000. That was for your heart. That was for Zuri's school. He just borrowed it, sugar," my mother said, fixing her hospital gown. "He and Jessica have a wonderful business plan. Something about importing luxury goods. Jessica knows people. She is very savvy. Your brother finally has a chance to be a millionaire, Monique. You should be happy for him instead of being so selfish." Selfish. The word hung in the air between us. I looked at this woman. The woman whose mortgage I paid, whose medical bills I covered, whose son I had fed and clothed while he sat on my sofa playing video games. Mom, I said, my voice shaking with a cold fury I had never felt before. The hospital is going to kick us out. There is no money for the surgery. Do you understand that? Dante took your heart. He will send it back, my mother snapped. He said he just needs a few days to flip the investment. You have a good job, Monique. You can make more money. You always do. You are strong. Dante is sensitive. He needs this win. Now go fix this with the administration. Tell them to bill you later. Before I could answer, the door opened behind me. It was not a nurse. It was two hospital security guards and the billing administrator. Ms. Monique, the administrator, said, her face hard and professional. We have been informed that the funds are not available. This is an elective surgery. We cannot proceed without payment. We need you to vacate the room so we can admit the next patient on the wait list. But my mother is sick, I whispered. Then take her to the county clinic, the guard said, stepping forward, his hand resting on his belt. This facility is for paying patients. You have 15 minutes to gather her things, or we will have to escort you out. I looked at my mother. She was glaring at me as if this was my failure. As if my inability to produce another $40,000 out of thin air was a personal insult to her. Call Dante, she hissed at me. Tell him to wire a deposit. He blocked me. Mom, I said, showing her my phone, where my messages were turning green instead of blue. He took the money, and he blocked me. Well, you probably annoyed him, my mother said, turning her face away. He will call when he is ready. Just get me my coat. I do not want to stay in this cheap hospital anyway. I packed her bag in silence. The shame burned my skin as the nurses watched us leave. I walked my mother to my car, the only thing I had left, that Dante hadn't figured out how to steal yet. I helped her into the passenger seat. My phone buzzed again. It was a notification from Instagram. It was Jessica, my brother's girlfriend. She had just posted a story. A video of them in first class clinking glasses of champagne. The caption read, "Finally getting the life I deserve. Thanks, babe. New money." I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Tears streamed down my face, but they were not tears of sadness anymore. They were tears of pure, unadulterated rage. My mother was humming a gospel song beside me, completely unbothered, believing her golden child would save her. She did not know that I was already planning a funeral. Not for her, but for the brother I used to love. I wiped my face and started the car. I had $0 in my bank account. But I had one thing Dante forgot about. I had Zuri waiting at home. And he had no idea what a 10-year-old coding prodigy was capable of when you mess with her mother. The drive home from the hospital was a blur of tears and white-knuckled grip on the steering wheel. My mind was racing, trying to calculate how I was going to pay the mortgage, let alone the $42,000 for my mother's surgery. I kept telling myself that at least I had my home. At least I had a sanctuary where I could sit down, breathe, and formulate a plan. I was wrong. As soon as I pulled into the driveway of my 4-bedroom house in the suburbs of Atlanta, I knew something was wrong. The front door, which I always double-locked, was slightly ajar. I did not even turn off the engine before jumping out of the car. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I pushed the door open, and the silence of the house screamed at me. It was not the peaceful silence of an empty home. It was the hollow, echoing silence of a place that had been gutted. I ran straight to the master bedroom, ignoring the disarray in the living room, where cushions had been tossed aside. I fell to my knees in front of my closet, pushing aside my hanging clothes to get to the small wall safe installed in the back. It was open. The heavy steel door hung loosely on its hinges. It had not been drilled. It had not been forced. The keypad was intact. Dante knew the combination. He had watched me type it in once months ago when I needed to get my passport. I had trusted him. I had trusted my own brother. I reached into the dark metal box, hoping against hope that he had left something behind. My fingers brushed against bare metal. Gone. Everything was gone. My grandmother's vintage diamond wedding ring, set the one she had smuggled out of Mississippi in the 50s, was gone. The heavy gold necklace my father gave me for graduation was gone. The emergency cash stack of $5,000 I kept for natural disasters was gone. And in the corner where the spare key fob for my Lexus usually sat there, was nothing but dust. He had taken the jewelry that represented 3 generations of our family's struggle and survival. He had taken it to pawn for a quick flip with his new girlfriend. I felt like I was going to throw up. I stumbled out of the closet and made my way to the kitchen, my legs feeling like lead. I needed water. I needed to wake up from this nightmare. That is when I saw it. Stuck to the stainless steel refrigerator with a magnet was a piece of yellow notebook paper. I ripped it down. The handwriting was messy, scrawled in haste with a blue ballpoint pen. I.O.U. Big time Mo. Do not be mad. Jessica says you do not even wear the jewelry anyway. We will buy you better stuff when the business takes off. Thanks for the car loan too. We took the spare Lexus. Keep your phone on. We will call you from the top. He had signed it with a smiley face. A smiley face. He had stripped me of my financial security and my family heirlooms, and he left a smiley face. I crumpled the note in my fist and screamed a sound that tore through my throat and left me gasping. Monique, honey, is everything all right? I spun around. Mrs. Perry, my next-door neighbor, was standing at my back door looking terrified. She was an elderly woman who spent most of her day gardening and watching the street. Mrs. Perry, I choked out, trying to compose myself. Did you see anyone? Did you see who was here? Well, yes, honey, I did, she said, stepping into the kitchen and looking around at the mess. I saw Dante and that girl of his, that blonde girl. They were here about 2 hours ago. They had a moving truck backed right up to the garage. A moving truck, I whispered. Yes, Mrs. Perry continued, adjusting her glasses. They were loading boxes. And Dante put a bunch of things in your other car, the silver one. They seemed in high spirits, Monique. They were laughing and blasting music. That girl was dancing in your driveway holding a jewelry box. I thought maybe you were moving, or they were helping you take things to storage. I waved, but they did not wave back. They were laughing. The image of Jessica dancing with my grandmother's ring in her hand, while I was at the hospital begging them to save my mother's heart, made my vision go red. They were celebrating their robbery, Mrs. Perry saw the look on my face and stepped back. Oh, Lord, Monique. They did not have permission, did they? No, Mrs. Perry, I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous calm. They did not. I was about to reach for my phone to call the police to report the car stolen, even though I knew my mother would never forgive me. But then a sound from the front yard stopped me. It was the heavy crunch of tires on gravel, followed by the slam of car doors. Not one door, 3 doors. Who is that? Mrs. Perry asked, peering through the window. I walked past her to the front living room window and pulled back the curtain. A sleek black SUV with tinted windows was idling in my driveway, right behind my car, blocking me in. It did not look like a police car. It did not look like a friendly visit. 3 men in dark suits were walking up my path. They moved with a purpose that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. These were not the kind of men who rang the doorbell to sell cookies. They were the kind of men who kicked doors down. Dante had not just stolen from me, he had led something dangerous right to my doorstep. The doorbell rang, a long, impatient buzz that echoed through my empty, violated house. I looked at Mrs. Perry and put a finger to my lips, but it was too late. The man in the middle was already looking through the side window, and his eyes locked directly onto mine. I opened the door before they could kick it in. The leader was a mountain of a man, with a scar running through his left eyebrow, and he smelled like stale tobacco and expensive cologne. He did not introduce himself. He just stepped into my foyer, forcing me to back up against the wall. "Where is he?" the man asked. His voice was a low rumble that vibrated in my chest. who I asked, trying to keep my voice steady even though my knees were shaking. Dante, the man said, spitting the name out like a curse word. He borrowed $50,000 from us last week. He said he needed it for a bridge loan. He said his sister was good for it. My stomach turned over. Dante had not just stolen from me. He had used my life as collateral for a loan from dangerous men. He is not here, I said, looking the man in the eye. He took everything I have and he left. He is probably on a plane right now. The man laughed, a dry, humorless sound. That is unfortunate for you, because the terms of the loan were very specific. 50,000 due in full plus 20% interest by noon today. If he is not here to pay, then the co-signer pays. I never signed anything, I argued, my panic rising. He had your deed, the man said, pulling a photocopy of a document from his jacket pocket. And he had a power of attorney. It looked legitimate enough for us. Now we can do this the easy way or the hard way. The easy way is you write me a check right now. The hard way involves us stripping this house of everything valuable and maybe breaking a few things you cannot replace just to send a message. I looked at the document. It was a forgery, a bad one. But arguing the legality of a signature with a loan shark in my hallway was a good way to get hurt. I took a deep breath and forced myself to switch modes. I was not Monique, the victimized sister, anymore. I was Monique, the forensic analyst. I dealt with financial criminals all day. I knew how they thought. They did not want violence, they wanted money. Violence was messy and brought police. Money was the goal. Listen to me, I said, pitching my voice lower, making it authoritative. You are a businessman. I can see that. You want your 50,000 plus the 10 grand interest. If you tear this house apart, you might find a few electronics, but you will not find $60,000 in cash. And if you hurt me, you bring down a police investigation that will freeze your operations for weeks. That is bad for business. The man narrowed his eyes, but he was listening. I am a financial analyst. I continued, stepping away from the wall to show I was not afraid. I have assets. But it is Saturday. Banks are closed. Wire transfers take time to clear, especially for that amount. I cannot give you cash today. But I can liquidate my portfolio. He crossed his massive arms. You have 48 hours. I need 3 days, I countered. 2 days, the man snarled, stepping into my personal space again. Monday at noon. If I do not have $60,000 in this hand by 12 o'clock, I am not coming back to talk. I am coming back to burn this place down with you inside it. Do we understand each other? We understand each other, I said. He stared at me for a long, uncomfortable moment, deciding if I was bluffing. Then he nodded once, turned around, and signaled to his 2 silent enforcers. They walked out, leaving the front door wide open. I watched them get into the black SUV and back out of my driveway. I stood there frozen like a statue until their taillights disappeared around the corner. The moment they were gone, the adrenaline crashed out of my system. My legs gave out, and I slid down the wall until I hit the hardwood floor. I pulled my knees to my chest and buried my face in my hands. The weight of it all crushed me. My mother was sick and blamed me. My brother had stolen my savings, my jewelry, and my car. And now men with guns were coming to burn my house down in 48 hours. I had no money. I had no way to get $60,000 by Monday. I was completely and utterly ruined. A soft sound made me look up. It was the creak of floorboards. I wiped my eyes frantically, not wanting my daughter to see me broken like this. But when I looked down the hallway, Zuri was already standing there. She was wearing her oversized pajamas and holding her iPad. The blue light from the screen illuminated her small, serious face. She did not look scared. She looked focused. Zuri, baby, go back to your room, I whispered, my voice cracking. Mommy just has a headache. Everything is fine. She did not move. She just stared at me with those sharp, intelligent eyes that reminded me so much of my father. I heard them. Mom, she said calmly. They want $60,000. I winced. I did not want her to know any of this. It is grown-up business, Zuri. Do not worry. I will fix it. You do not have to fix it, she said, walking closer. Her voice was flat, emotionless, almost robotic. I saw Uncle Dante typing on your computer last week. I saw him take pictures of your driver's license and the deed to the house. You saw him? I asked, confused. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted to see what he was doing, she said, shrugging. I put a keylogger on the family computer a month ago because he kept trying to guess the Wi-Fi password. I saw him log into your bank, or I saw him apply for the loan online using your information. My mouth fell open. You knew. I knew he was trying to steal. Zuri corrected me. But he is not very smart, Mom. He thinks he transferred the money to his account. But I rerouted the packets. Rerouted the packets. I repeated the words sounding foreign in my ears. Zuri, what are you talking about? She turned the iPad around to face me. On the screen was a black window with lines of green code scrolling rapidly. I built a sandbox, she explained, as if she were talking about a school science project. It is a fake environment. When Dante hit transfer, the bank confirmed it on his screen. But the request actually went to a holding server I set up. The money never left the bank, Mom. It is just frozen in a pending state that only I can unlock. I stared at her, my 10-year-old daughter, and the loan. She continued tapping the screen. I tracked the IP address of the lender. It is an offshore shell company. I cannot stop them from coming back, but I can trace where the money went, or where they think it went. She looked me dead in the eye. Mom, stop crying. Uncle Dante does not have your money. And those men are not going to burn the house down. Because in about 10 minutes, Uncle Dante is going to have a much bigger problem than us. I just sent his location to the authorities. Not the police here. The authorities in Dubai. I sat there on the floor, stunned into silence, looking at my little girl who had just outsmarted a con artist and a loan shark without leaving her bedroom. I stared at my daughter as if she were a stranger. For 10 years I had packed her lunch boxes, braided her hair, and driven her to piano lessons. I knew she was smart. I knew she liked computers more than dolls. But I did not know she was capable of orchestrating an international cyber trap from her bedroom while wearing unicorn pajamas. Zuri, I said slowly, my voice still trembling from the encounter with the loan sharks. You need to explain this to me right now. What do you mean the money never left the bank? I saw the zero balance. I saw the transaction history. Zuri sat down on the floor next to me and tapped her iPad screen. The lines of green code vanished, replaced by a diagram that looked like two identical bank vaults. Think of it like a video game, Mom, she said, her voice calm and patient. You know how when I play my building game, I can play in creative mode or survival mode. In creative mode, nothing is real. It is just a simulation. I nodded, wiping a stray tear from my cheek. Well, when I saw Uncle Dante trying to guess your password last week, I did not block him. Zuri continued. If I blocked him, he would just get angry and try another way. Or maybe he would have forced you to give it to him. So I built a sandbox. A sandbox, I repeated. It is a ghost machine, she said. A mirror image. I created a fake version of your banking portal. It looks exactly like the real one. It has your logo, your account numbers, your history. But it sits on a private server I rented. When Dante logged in using your credentials, he was not logging into the bank. He was logging into my game. My head was spinning. I felt a flicker of hope, a tiny spark in the darkness. So when he hit transfer, the simulation told him it was successful. Zuri said, a small smile playing on her lips. His phone showed a confirmation number. His account showed the money arriving. But in reality, the command he sent was rerouted. Rerouted where? I asked, gripping her arm. Zuri, where is the money? Where is the $42,000 for Grandma's heart? It is in an escrow wallet I created, Zuri said, pointing to a locked icon on her screen. It is sitting in a secure digital holding cell. It never went to Dante. It never went to Jessica. It is right here, safe. I let out a breath I did not know I had been holding. The relief was so intense it almost made me dizzy. The money was safe. My mother could have her surgery. We were not destitute. Then put it back, I said, scrambling to my feet. Zuri, put it back right now. We have to call the hospital. We have to tell the loan shark. No, Mom, Zuri said sharply. Her tone stopped me cold. It was not the voice of a child. It was the voice of someone in command. We cannot put it back yet, she explained, standing up to face me. If I move the money back to your main account now, Dante will see the reversal. He will know he has been caught. He will run. And more importantly, that loan shark will know Dante does not have the cash. If the shark cannot get the money from Dante, who do you think he comes back for? I looked at the front door where the large man had stood only minutes ago. He comes back for us, I whispered. Exactly, Zuri said. We need the loan shark to chase Dante. And to do that, Dante has to believe he won. He has to believe he is rich. We have to let him spend the money, but he cannot spend it if he does not have it. I argued, my confusion returning. If it is a simulation, how can he buy things? That is the best part, Zuri said, her eyes gleaming with a terrifying intelligence. I linked his digital wallet to a high-risk credit line I found on the dark web using Jessica's identity. When they swipe their cards in Dubai, they are not spending your cash, Mom. They are racking up debt on a shadow account that is flagged by Interpol for money laundering. My jaw dropped. You did what? We need a trigger event, Zuri said, ignoring my shock. We need them to make one big purchase, something huge, something that crosses the threshold of $10,000 in a single transaction. Once they do that, the system trips. The shadow account locks down and notifies the local authorities that a flagged fugitive is trying to move assets. And then what, I asked. And then the sandbox dissolves, Zuri said simply. The simulation ends. They will be standing in a foreign country with frozen cards, zero cash, and police on the way. And your money unlocks from the escrow and slides quietly back into your account as if it never left. It was brilliant. It was terrifying. And it was completely illegal. My 10-year-old daughter had weaponized the banking system to protect us. I pulled her into a hug, burying my face in her hair. I did not know whether to punish her or give her a medal. We just have to wait, Mom, Zuri mumbled into my shirt. We just have to wait for them to get greedy. As if on cue, my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. The sound made us both jump. I released Zuri and walked over to it. The screen lit up with another notification. It was Instagram again. Jessica had posted a new update. I unlocked the phone and stared at the image. It was a photo of the Burj Al Arab in Dubai, the famous sail-shaped hotel. In the foreground, Dante and Jessica were holding up expensive crystal flutes of amber liquid. They looked ecstatic. They looked like royalty. The caption read, "Living the dream. Just checked into the royal suite. 25,000 a night, baby. Because we can." I looked at Zuri. She was watching me, her expression unreadable. 25,000 a night, I read aloud. Is that enough? Is that the trigger? Zuri walked over and looked at the photo. She did not smile. She just tapped a few keys on her iPad. Not yet, she said softly. That is just the hotel hold. Wait until they try to pay for the first bottle of vintage champagne. Wait until they try to buy a car. That is when the trap snaps shut. I looked at the photo of my brother one last time. He looked so happy, so arrogant. He had no idea that he was not standing in a luxury suite. He was standing in a cage. And his 10-year-old niece was holding the key. While I was sitting on my kitchen floor plotting with a 10-year-old genius, my brother and his girlfriend were 7,000 miles away, living a fantasy that was built on a foundation of sand. Through the screen of my laptop, which Zuri had set up to mirror Dante's digital activity, I watched their spending spree unfold in real time. They had checked into the Burj Al Arab, the sail-shaped hotel that costs more for one night than most people earn in 3 months. They were seated at a table overlooking the Persian Gulf, the water shimmering like the diamonds Dante had stolen from my safe. On the screen, I could see the live feed from Jessica's Instagram. She was holding her phone up high, finding the perfect lighting to showcase her new designer sunglasses and the skyline behind her. "Hey guys," she chirped, her voice dripping with that fake sweetness that always made my teeth ache. "Just wanted to hop on here and show you what real success looks like." We finally made it out of the hood and away from the toxic energy back home. She laughed, tossing her hair back and winking at the camera. "Some people just hate to see you shine, especially dusty, jealous in-laws who think small and stay broke." I watched her pan the camera over to Dante. My brother was wearing a new linen suit that looked ridiculous on him. He was cutting into a steak that was literally covered in gold leaf. A golden steak. It was the epitome of everything Dante was. Flashy, expensive, and completely lacking in substance. "Say hi to the fans, babe," Jessica cooed. Dante looked up, his mouth full of gold-covered meat, and grinned. "We are just getting started," he announced to the thousands of strangers watching. This is what happens when you are smart enough to seize an opportunity. To the moon, baby. The waiter approached their table with a leather folder containing the bill. I leaned closer to my laptop screen, my heart pounding not with fear but with anticipation. This was the test. Zuri was sitting next to me, her eyes glued to her iPad, her fingers hovering over the enter key. The bill was for $3,200. For lunch. Dante did not even look at the total. He pulled out the black card, the one he thought was linked to my drained savings account. He looked so arrogant, so sure of himself. He tapped the card against the terminal. For a split second, the machine processed. I held my breath. If it declined, the game was over too soon. We needed them to feel safe. We needed them to dig a hole so deep they could never climb out. Beep. Approved. Dante smirked and tossed the card back onto the table. He thought he was spending my hard-earned money. He thought he was draining the life savings I had built over a decade of 80-hour work weeks. He had no idea that Zuri had intercepted the signal. The approval code on the machine was fake, generated by her sandbox server. But the debt was very real. It was not being deducted from my account. It was being piled onto a high-interest shadow credit line that Zuri had opened using Jessica's stolen identity details Jessica had carelessly left on unsecure networks for years. Every dollar they spent was another nail in Jessica's financial coffin, and she was smiling while she hammered them in. My phone buzzed on the counter. It was a video call request. The name on the screen made my stomach turn. Dante. I took a deep breath, composed my face into a mask of misery, and swiped accept. Dante's face filled the screen. He looked sweaty and manic, the adrenaline of theft coursing through his veins. Behind him, Jessica was ordering another bottle of champagne. "What is up, big sis?" he shouted over the thumping club music in the background. "I just wanted to make sure you were seeing the updates. We are investing your capital wisely, Mo. Very wisely." "Dante," I said, making my voice sound small and broken. "Please, Mom is sick. We need that money for the surgery. Please just send it back." He laughed, a cruel sound that distorted over the connection. "Don't be such a drama queen. Mom is fine. I will fly her out here once the business triples. You are just mad because you are stuck in that boring house living your boring life while I am making moves. You always thought you were better than me because you went to college and got a job. Well, look at us now. Who is the smart one now, Monique?" I looked at him. I looked at the gold steak he had not finished. I looked at the woman behind him who was ruining his life without even knowing it. "Enjoy it, Dante," I said softly. "Enjoy every single bite." "I will," he sneered. "Oh, and tell the repo men I said hello. I am sure they are looking for me. Good luck with that." He ended the call, leaving me staring at my reflection in the black screen. He thought he had won. He thought he was untouchable. He did not know that he had just authorized a $3,000 transaction that was the first breadcrumb in a trail leading straight to prison. Zuri looked up from her iPad and took a sip of her juice box. "That is $10,000 in total spending today, Mom," she said calmly. "They are moving to the jewelry district next. I can see the GPS location." "Let them go," I said, feeling a cold resolve settle in my chest. "Let them buy the whole world." Because when the bill comes due, they are going to wish they had stayed broke in Atlanta. I thought the silence of my empty house was bad, but the noise that followed was infinitely worse. By Saturday evening, my phone had turned into a weapon. It sat on the kitchen counter, vibrating incessantly with calls and notifications that felt like physical blows. You would think that after being robbed by your own brother, the family would rally around the victim. You would expect sympathy. You would expect outrage. But in my family, the truth did not matter as much as the narrative. And the narrative Dante was spinning from his five-star hotel suite was compelling. It started with Aunt Linda. She was the matriarch of the extended family, the one whose opinion swayed everyone else. When her name flashed on my screen, I picked up, hoping she would offer some comfort. "Monique," she said, her voice sharp and accusatory. "Why are you spreading lies about your brother?" I blinked, holding the phone away from my ear. "Auntie, he stole everything. He took Mom's surgery money. He took Grandma's ring." "Oh, stop it," Linda snapped. "I just got a delivery notification. Dante sent me a brand new Louis Vuitton handbag from Dubai. He sent cousin Marcus a pair of limited edition sneakers. He sent your Uncle Ray $500 on Cash App. Does that sound like a thief to you? That sounds like a young man who finally made it big and is sharing his blessings. He is buying your silence with stolen money," I tried to explain, my voice rising in desperation. "He is using credit cards that are going to bounce." "It is not real, Auntie." "You are just jealous," Linda said, cutting me off. "You always have been. You think because you went to college and work in that fancy office that you are better than him. You cannot stand to see him shine. You are bitter, Monique, and it is ugly. Fix your heart before you end up alone." She hung up before I could respond. I stared at the phone, feeling a fresh wave of nausea. Dante was smart. Evil, but smart. He knew that if he sprinkled a few $1,000s worth of gifts on the family, they would build a wall of protection around him that I could not break. He was buying their loyalty with debt that was currently being racked up in Jessica's name. Then the phone rang again. This time it was the hospital. I answered, expecting it to be the billing department telling me I had to move my mother, but it was Mom herself. "Monique," Beatrice said, her voice weak and trembling. "The nurses told me you were asking about filing a police report." "Mom, I have to," I said, rubbing my temples. "The loan sharks. The theft. I have to protect us." "If you call the police on my son, I will die," Beatrice said. "Do not say that, Mom." "I mean it," she hissed, her voice suddenly regaining its strength. "I will stop eating. I will refuse my medication. If you send the police after Dante, I will let my heart stop right here in this bed. Do you want that on your conscience? Do you want to be the reason your mother died?" I felt the room spin. This was the weapon she always used: emotional blackmail. She was willing to put her life on the line, not to save herself, but to shield the son who had just robbed her blind. "He sent me flowers, Monique." She continued, her tone softening into manipulation. "Huge white orchids. He said he is wiring the surgery money on Monday. He just needs the bank to clear the international transfer. He is a good boy, is. He made a mistake taking the jewelry, but he will buy better ones. Just give him time. Promise me, Monique. Promise me no police." I looked at Zuri, who was sitting at the table, calmly eating a bowl of cereal while monitoring the flow of data on her screen. She shook her head slightly. She knew we did not need the police. Not yet. "Fine, Mom." I lied, my voice hollow. "No police. Just eat your dinner." I hung up, feeling like I had been hollowed out with a spoon. My entire family had turned against me. They were feasting on the scraps Dante threw them, praising him as a hero, while I sat in the wreckage of the home he had violated. My phone pinged one last time. It was not a call. It was a direct message on Instagram. It was from Jessica. She had sent a photo of herself in a silk robe holding a thick stack of cash. The message underneath was short and cruel. "Thanks for the startup capital, you bitter old lady. Don't worry, we will name a clearance rack after you when we launch the brand. Enjoy your empty house." I stared at the words. She called me old. She called me bitter. She thanked me for the money she thought she had stolen. For the first time all day, I did not feel like crying. I felt a cold, hard resolve settle in my chest like concrete. They wanted me to be the villain. They wanted me to be the jealous sister. Fine, I would play the role. But they had forgotten one thing. In every story about a golden child, there is a reckoning. I looked over at Zuri. Is the trap still active? I asked. Zuri looked up and smiled a terrifying little smile. Active and waiting, Mom, she said. They just ordered bottle service at a club. Another $5,000 added to the debt. Good, I said, placing my phone face down. Let them dance, because the music is about to stop. I thought I had reached the limit of how much betrayal I could absorb in one weekend. I was wrong. The human heart is resilient, but my family seemed determined to test its breaking point. Sunday morning broke with a gray, oppressive sky that matched the mood inside my house. I was sitting at the kitchen island, nursing a cold cup of coffee, while Zuri worked silently on her laptop across from me. We were in the eye of the storm waiting for the inevitable crash. It started with a notification on my phone. Not a text, not a call, but a security alert from the smart home system I had installed in my mother's hospital room. I had set it up to monitor her vitals and ensure the nurses were attending to her, but it also had an audio feed. I opened the app expecting to hear the beep of heart monitors or the shuffle of a nurse changing an IV bag. Instead, I heard whispering. Urgent, conspiratorial whispering. I turned the volume up. It was my mother. And she was on speakerphone with Jessica. Mama B, listen to me. Jessica's voice filtered through the tiny speaker, dripping with that synthetic sweetness that made my skin crawl. Dante and I are looking at this incredible property right on the Palm Jumeirah. It is a villa, ocean views, private beach. But the developer needs a commitment today. We are talking about a 300% return on investment in 6 months. Imagine that. You could retire in Dubai. You could have your own suite with a butler. I gripped the phone tighter. They were not satisfied with the cash. Now they were selling her a fantasy. That sounds wonderful, baby. My mother's voice sounded weak but eager. A butler. Lord knows I deserve some rest after raising 2 children. But Jessica, I do not have any more cash. Monique says the accounts are locked. Forget Monique. Jessica snapped, her tone sharpening instantly. Monique is trying to control you. She wants to keep you in that drafty old house in Atlanta because she is jealous of your potential. She does not want you to live like a queen. But we found a loophole, Mama B. We do not need cash. We need collateral. Collateral, my mother asked. The house, Jessica said. The deed to the house. It is still in your name, right? I know Monique pays the mortgage, but the title is yours. I felt the blood drain from my face. The house. My grandfather's house. The place where Zuri took her first steps. The place I had poured hundreds of thousands of dollars into renovating and maintaining. It was technically still in Beatrice's name because she refused to sign it over, claiming it was the only leverage she had left as a matriarch. Yes, it is in my name, Beatrice said hesitantly. But Monique and Zuri live there. They can rent it from us, Jessica soothed. Or they can move. Monique makes good money. She can figure it out. Listen, Mama B, I sent over a digital transfer form. It is a power of attorney granting me the rights to leverage the property for international investment. Once you sign this, Dante can secure the villa. We will be rich. We will buy you 5 houses. Just press the blue button on the email I just sent you. I did not wait to hear anymore. I scrambled to my feet, knocking my chair over. I had to stop this. I had to call the hospital administration. I had to call our family lawyer, Mr. Jenkins, and scream that my mother was under duress and being manipulated by con artists. If she signed that digital document, Jessica and Dante could legally sell the house out from under us, or worse, use it as collateral for their massive debts, which would lead to immediate foreclosure. I grabbed my keys, my hands shaking so hard I dropped them twice. I was halfway to the door, ready to drive to the hospital and physically snatch the phone out of my mother's hand when a small voice stopped me cold. Mom, wait. I spun around. Zuri was standing by the refrigerator blocking my path. She was not looking at her screen anymore. She was looking at me with that terrifying, calm focus. "Move, Zuri!" I yelled, my panic making my voice shrill. "You do not understand. They are stealing the house. If she signs that paper, we are homeless. Jessica will leverage the deed and we will be evicted. I have to stop her." "No, you don't," Zuri said firmly, not moving an inch. "Let her sign it." "Are you crazy?" I screamed, tears finally spilling over. "This is our home, Zuri. This is everything. It is not a home anymore, Mom," Zuri said, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "It is bait." I froze. "Bait." Zuri walked over to me and took the keys from my trembling hand. She led me back to the table and turned her laptop around. On the screen was a complex web of files and legal codes that I could barely decipher. "Mom, listen to me closely," Zuri said, looking deep into my eyes. "Right now, Dante and Jessica are just guilty of theft and credit card fraud. That is bad, but rich people get away with that all the time. Daddy always said follow the money, but to catch a monster you have to let them eat." She pointed to a file on the screen labeled Title Deed Trap. "I flagged the property title in the county database 3 days ago," Zuri explained. "I added a digital watermark to the deed. If Mom signs that transfer, she is not just giving them a house. She is engaging in wire fraud involving real estate. And because Jessica is claiming this is for an international investment, it triggers the Patriot Act provisions regarding money laundering through real estate assets." I stared at her, trying to process the magnitude of what she was saying. "If you stop her now," Zuri continued, "they might get away with a slap on the wrist. They might keep the cash they stole. But if she signs that document, she links herself and Dante to a federal crime. The moment the deed transfer hits the system, it does not go to a buyer. It goes directly to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division as evidence of an asset layering scheme." "But Mom," I whispered, thinking of Beatrice. "She is signing it too. She will be an accomplice." Zuri looked down at the table for a second, a flicker of sadness crossing her face before she hardened her expression again. "Grandma made her choice, Mom. She chose the lie. We cannot save people who want to drown, but we can save this house. By letting them steal it, we ensure that the government seizes it back and returns it to the victim. You." My phone dinged. A notification from the county clerk's automated system. "Deed transfer initiated. Pending signature." I looked at Zuri. She nodded slowly. I closed my eyes and let out a shaky breath. I imagined my mother in her hospital bed pressing that blue button, thinking she was buying a villa in Dubai, while actually signing her own eviction notice. "Okay," I whispered, opening my eyes. "Let her sign." 10 seconds later, the notification changed. "Transfer complete. Title holder updated Jessica Vance." Zuri typed a final command on her keyboard and hit enter with a loud, definitive clack. "Got them," she said. "The trap is sealed. Now we just wait for the fireworks." I drove to the hospital not to stop her but to witness the end of us. There is a specific kind of heartbreak that comes from watching a parent choose their favorite child over their responsible one, and I needed to see it with my own eyes to believe it. I needed the image burned into my memory so that when the guilt came later, I would have something to fight it with. The hospital corridor was quiet, filled only with the rhythmic beeping of monitors and the squeak of rubber shoes on linoleum. I walked to room 304 and stopped just outside the door, which was cracked open a few inches. My mother Beatrice was sitting up in bed. The hospital gown looked small on her frail frame, but her face was animated, illuminated by the harsh blue light of an iPad screen. She was not alone. She was on a video call, and even from the hallway I could hear the tinny, distorted voice of Jessica coming through the speaker. "Just press the blue box," Mama B. Jessica was saying, her voice dripping with urgency. "That is it. Just one little tap, and we can secure the villa. Dante is meeting with the developer in 10 minutes. We do not want to lose this view." I held my breath and leaned closer. Part of me wanted to burst into the room and snatch the tablet away. I wanted to shake her. I wanted to scream that she was signing away the house my grandfather built with his bare hands, the house where Zuri took her first steps. But Zuri's voice echoed in my head. Let her sign. It is the only way. My mother hesitated for a second, her finger hovering over the glass. I saw her frown slightly. Monique is going to be so angry, she murmured more to herself than to the phone. She pays the bills on that house. She says it is her security. Forget Monique. Dante's voice suddenly cut in loud and aggressive. Monique is selfish, Mom. She wants to keep you trapped in that old dusty life. She is jealous because I am making big moves and she is just a worker bee. Do you want to die in that old house or do you want to live in a palace with servants? I am trying to save you, Mom. I am the only one who really loves you enough to give you what you deserve. I felt a physical pain in my chest, sharp and cold. Monique is selfish. After I paid off her debts, after I funded her treatments, after I put my own life on hold for years to care for her. You are right, Beatrice said, her expression hardening. Monique has always been difficult. She counts every penny. She does not understand vision like we do, Dante. She thinks small. She will be fine. She can rent an apartment. She can rent an apartment. The woman I had protected for my entire adult life was dismissing my homelessness with a wave of her hand. I watched as my mother took a deep breath and pressed her index finger firmly onto the screen of the iPad. She swiped across the digital signature box. It was done. In 1 second of delusion, she had transferred the title of our ancestral home to a shell company controlled by a woman she had met 3 times. Perfect! Jessica squealed. We got it. The transfer is processing. We love you, Mama B. You just made the best decision of your life. Pack your bags because as soon as this deal closes, we are flying you out first class. I love you too, babies, Beatrice said, smiling at the screen, with a warmth she had not shown me in years. Make me proud. The call ended. My mother set the iPad down on her bedside table and leaned back, looking satisfied and smug. She closed her eyes, dreaming of a Dubai villa that did not exist. I stepped back from the door. I did not go in. I did not confront her. There was nothing left to say. The mother I knew was gone, replaced by this stranger who would sell me out for a promise of luxury. I turned around and walked down the long white hallway. My heels clicked against the floor, a steady marching rhythm. With every step, I felt something inside me freeze over. The daughter who sought validation was dead. The sister who forgave everything was dead. All that was left was the forensic analyst who knew exactly how to execute a takedown. I walked out into the humid Atlanta air and got into my car. I picked up my phone, which had been silent, in my pocket. There was a new message from Zuri. It was a screenshot of a secure server log. The text was green against a black background. Asset linked, trap armed, federal flags triggered. I looked at the words and felt a terrifying sense of calm. They had the house, but they also had the anchor that would drag them to the bottom of the ocean. I started the engine and drove away, leaving my mother to her dreams. She wanted Dante to take care of her. Now he would have to, assuming he could do it from a prison cell. I walked back into the kitchen, feeling like a ghost haunting a house I no longer owned. The silence in the room was heavy, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator and the rhythmic clicking of Zuri's keyboard. I sat down opposite my daughter and looked at her. She did not look like a child who had just watched her grandmother sign away the family legacy. She looked like a general surveying a battlefield after a decisive maneuver. The deed is done, Zuri said, without looking up from her screen. Her voice was flat and professional. According to the county records updated 30 seconds ago, Jessica Vance is now the sole owner of this property. Grandma is no longer on the title. And neither are we. I felt a fresh wave of nausea hit me. Hearing it out loud made it real. I looked around at the kitchen cabinets I had painted last summer and the height chart pencil marks on the doorframe. It all belonged to a stranger now. A stranger who hated us. But Zuri continued turning the laptop around to face me. That is exactly what we wanted. Mom, you need to stop thinking about this house as a physical building with bricks and windows. You need to think of it as a digital asset. A very large, very heavy digital asset that Jessica just strapped to her back. I wiped my face and tried to focus on the screen. It showed a map of the world with glowing red lines connecting Atlanta to Dubai and several other locations I did not recognize. What am I looking at? Zuri, I asked. You are looking at the laundromat, Zuri said. It is a simulation I built based on the case studies you showed me from your work last year. Remember when you told me how cartels move money through real estate to clean it? I nodded slowly. Yes. It is called placement, layering, and integration. Exactly, Zuri said, her eyes lighting up. Well, I created a digital profile for Jessica that mimics that behavior perfectly. For the last 48 hours, I have been pinging her identity against known watch lists on the dark web. I made it look like she is moving large sums of cryptocurrency through unverified exchanges. I stared at her. Zuri, that is illegal. It is a simulation, Zuri reminded me. Until she actually moved a real asset. That is why we needed the house mom. The moment Jessica accepted the digital deed transfer, she moved a physical asset worth hundreds of thousands of dollars into her name while supposedly being out of the country. And because I attached a specific metadata tag to the deed transfer, Zuri continued pointing to a flashing red icon on the screen. The system interprets this as the final step in a money laundering scheme. I did not just flag her for fraud, Mom. I flagged her for something much worse. I leaned in closer, reading the text next to the flashing icon. My blood ran cold. High-risk terrorist financing. Zuri, I whispered. That is a federal designation. That puts her on the no-fly list. That alerts Homeland Security. That alerts Interpol. Zuri nodded solemnly. It does. And because the asset she moved is this house, the federal government now has the authority to freeze everything she touches. They will not just look at the house. They will look at her bank accounts, her credit cards, and her passport. They think she is funding a cell group. They think she is dangerous. But she is just a greedy influencer, I said, feeling a strange mix of horror and admiration. The algorithm does not know the difference, Zuri said, closing the laptop. And by the time human agents figure it out, Dante and Jessica will be in custody. We just turned the house into a tracking beacon, Mom. And they just turned it on. 7,000 miles away, the sun was setting over the Persian Gulf, casting a golden glow over the city of Dubai. Jessica and Dante were walking through the air-conditioned corridors of a high-end shopping mall. They were high on the adrenaline of their victory. In their minds, they were now property moguls. They had secured the collateral they needed for their imaginary villa. Jessica stopped in front of a boutique that sold hand-woven silk scarves. She picked one up, rubbing the expensive fabric between her fingers. We should get this for your mom, Jessica said with a sneer. A little consolation prize for giving us the house. It will look good when we visit her in the nursing home. Dante laughed, wrapping his arm around her waist. You are bad, Jess. I love it. Get two. One for you. Jessica walked to the counter and threw the scarf down along with a pack of gourmet dates. She pulled out her platinum credit card, the one Zuri had linked to the shadow account. She smiled at the cashier, tapping her manicured nails on the glass counter. Just run it as credit, sweetie, she said arrogantly. The cashier inserted the card. The machine beeped. A long, low tone. The cashier frowned. I am sorry, ma'am. It says declined. Jessica rolled her eyes and sighed loudly. Do not be ridiculous. There is no limit on that card. It is an international platinum. Try it again. You probably have a bad connection in here. The cashier looked annoyed, but swiped the card again. This time the machine took longer. The screen flashed a message that the cashier could not quite understand, but the red light was unmistakable. Declined again, the cashier said, handing the card back. It says contact issuer immediately. Jessica snatched the card back, her face flushing with anger. Ugh, this third-world internet is garbage. Fine. She pulled out another card, a debit card linked to a different account. Use this one, she snapped. And hurry up. We have a dinner reservation at the Burj Khalifa. The second card worked. The transaction went through. Jessica grabbed the bag and stormed out of the store, Dante trailing behind her. Stupid machines, Jessica muttered, shoving the declined card back into her purse. I am going to call the bank and scream at them. How dare they embarrass me over a scarf? She did not know that it was not a network error. She did not know that the declined transaction was the first ripple of a tsunami. The designation Zuri had placed on her file had just propagated through the international banking SWIFT system. That declined card was not a glitch. It was the first lock snapping shut on her cage, and she had just walked deeper into the trap. Monday morning in Dubai brought with it a heat that could melt pavement, but inside the showroom of Emirates Luxury Auto, the air was cool and scented with expensive leather and sandalwood. I sat in my kitchen in Atlanta, sipping tea while watching the surveillance feed Zuri had accessed. It was like watching a reality show where you know the season finale ends in a prison sentence. Dante and Jessica were strolling through the rows of supercars like they owned the place. Jessica was wearing a white linen suit and oversized sunglasses, looking every bit the international heiress she was pretending to be. Dante trailed behind her, looking nervous but excited, his eyes darting from a Ferrari to a Lamborghini. We need something liquid, babe, Jessica said. Her voice captured clearly by the showroom's high-quality security microphones. Real estate takes too long to close. We need an asset we can move fast. If we buy the McLaren, we can ship it to Miami and sell it for cash next week. It washes the trail. That is how the pros do it. She sounded so confident, so sure of her criminal expertise. She had no idea that she was walking into a buzzsaw. Zuri had explained it to me earlier. The banking system has layers. When a credit card is flagged for standard fraud, it just stops working. But when a card is flagged for terrorist financing or international money laundering, the bank does not just decline the transaction. They are legally required to stall the suspect and contact local law enforcement. It is called a silent trigger. I watched as Dante stopped in front of a neon green McLaren 720S. The price tag on the windshield was $340,000. This is the one, Jessica declared, snapping her fingers for a salesperson. It screams new money. I love it. A sales manager in an impeccable suit glided over. He saw the expensive clothes, he saw the arrogance, and he smelled a commission. He ushered them to a glass desk in the center of the showroom. I watched Dante pull out the black metal card. It was the heavy one, the one he loved to flash at bartenders. He handed it over with a flourish. Wrap it up, Dante said, leaning back in his chair. We want it delivered to the Burj Al Arab by this evening. And throw in a detailing kit. The manager smiled, that practiced smile of someone about to make $20,000 in commission. Certainly, sir. Just a moment while we process the authorization. He inserted the card into the chip reader. I leaned closer to my laptop screen. Zuri stopped typing. We both held our breath. This was the moment. The system was about to query the shadow account Zuri had created, the one that was now glowing red with federal warnings. The manager stared at his screen. His smile faltered. He typed something on his keyboard. He frowned. Then he looked up at Dante and Jessica. The warmth was gone from his eyes, replaced by a cold, professional caution. Is there a problem? Jessica asked, tapping her foot impatiently. The system is asking for a secondary verbal verification from the bank. The manager lied smoothly. It happens often with international purchases of this magnitude. It is for your protection, of course. He stood up, taking the card with him. Please, why don't you join me in our VIP lounge? We have espresso and dates. It will just take a few minutes to clear this up with the head office. Jessica rolled her eyes but stood up. Fine. But hurry up. We have a brunch reservation. The manager led them away from the open showroom floor and down a hallway to a heavy mahogany door. He ushered them inside. The room was luxurious with plush velvet sofas and gold-framed art, But as soon as the door closed, I heard a distinct mechanical click. The manager did not follow them in. He walked straight to his desk, picked up a landline, and dialed a 3-digit number. Zuri hacked the audio feed just in time for us to hear him whisper, "This is Emirates Auto. I have a code red on a blocked instrument. Names are Dante Brooks and Jessica Vance. The system says hold for authorities. They are secured in the viewing room. Yes, send them now." Inside the room, Dante and Jessica sat on the velvet sofa, unaware that the door was magnetically locked. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. "Where is the coffee?" Jessica complained, pacing the small room. "This service is trash. I am going to write a scathing review." Dante looked uneasy. He walked to the door and tried the handle. It did not turn. He pulled harder. Locked. "Babe," Dante said, his voice rising in panic. "The door is locked." "Don't be stupid," Jessica snapped. "Push it." "I am pushing it, Jessica. It is locked from the outside." Suddenly, the reality of their situation began to dawn on them. The silence in the showroom outside seemed heavy. There were no sounds of coffee being made, no sounds of a manager returning with an apology. Just the hum of the air conditioning and the distant sound of sirens getting closer. Dante scrambled for his phone. He did not call the police. He did not call a lawyer. He called the person he always blamed when his life fell apart. My phone buzzed on the kitchen table. It was a text from Dante. "Monique, what did you do? The card is not working and these people locked us in a room. Call the bank right now and authorize the charge. Fix this, Monique, or I swear I will tell Mom you are sabotaging me. Open the damn card." I looked at the message and then at the screen where my brother was sweating in a velvet chair while Jessica screamed at a locked door. I took a sip of my tea. I did not reply. I just watched the flashing blue lights reflect off the showroom glass in the video feed. The glitch wasn't in the card. The glitch was in their belief that they could steal from me and get away with it. And now the system was about to reboot. My phone buzzed again, dancing across the coffee table, with the vibration of a dozen frantic text messages. I did not pick it up. I did not even glance at the screen to read the threats and the begging. Instead, I reached into the large bowl of popcorn sitting between Zuri and me and tossed a kernel into my mouth. The salt and butter tasted like victory. We were sitting in the living room with the lights dimmed watching the 65-inch television screen. But we were not watching a movie. We were watching the dashboard of Zuri's trap unfold in real time. It was mesmerizing. On the left side of the screen we had the audio feed from Dante's phone, which Zuri had remotely compromised hours ago. On the right side we had the status log from the shadow server showing the communication between the Dubai banking authorities and the international police agencies. It was a slow burn. Zuri explained that because the flag was for terrorist financing and money laundering, the local police in Dubai did not want to just swoop in and make a scene. They wanted to see who else was involved. They wanted to see if Dante led them to a bigger fish. So they were playing the long game, and that made it infinitely more torturous for my brother. Through the speakers we heard the click of the VIP room lock disengaging. I leaned forward. The showroom manager's voice came through smooth and apologetic, but with an edge of steel underneath. "Mr. Brooks. Ms. Vance, so sorry for the delay. It seems there is a significant irregularity with the verification of your funds. The bank has put a temporary hold on the transaction." We heard the sound of Jessica's heels clicking aggressively on the floor. "A hold," she snapped. "This is ridiculous. Do you know who we are? We are buying a McLaren, not a Toyota. I want to speak to your manager." "I am the manager, madam," the voice replied. "And unfortunately, this is out of my hands. However, because of the nature of the flag on your account, we are required to follow protocol." "Protocol?" Dante's voice squeaked. He sounded terrified. "What protocol?" We heard the rustle of fabric and the heavy footsteps of new people entering the room. I looked at the data screen. 2 icons labeled Immigration Enforcement had just entered the GPS radius. "We need to see your passports, please," a new deeper voice said. "Why?" Jessica demanded. "We are just buying a car. We do not need to show you our papers. Standard procedure for high-value international transactions," the officer lied. It was a beautiful lie. If they refused, they would be arrested for non-compliance. If they handed them over, they were trapped. We heard the sound of zippers opening and the slap of booklets being handed over. There was a long silence. "Thank you," the officer said. "We will need to retain these for a standard administrative check. It usually takes 24 to 48 hours. You are free to return to your hotel, but you cannot leave the emirate until the check is complete." "Retain them," Dante shouted. "You are taking our passports. You cannot do that. We have a flight to the Maldives on Wednesday." The officer's voice dropped an octave, cold and final. "You can return to your hotel, sir. Do not make this a criminal matter. Good day." We heard the sound of the showroom doors opening and the rush of hot desert wind as they were escorted out. They were free technically, but without passports in a foreign country with frozen accounts, they were effectively prisoners. As soon as they were in a taxi, the explosion happened. I did not need a video feed to visualize the vein popping in Jessica's forehead. "You idiot!" she screamed, and the audio spiked so loud I had to lower the volume on the TV. "You told me the money was clean. You told me your sister was too stupid to notice." "She is stupid," Dante yelled back, his voice cracking. "I don't know what happened. Maybe the bank made a mistake. Maybe Monique canceled the cards." "Canceled the cards?" Jessica laughed, a harsh manic sound. "That manager looked at us like we were terrorists, Dante. They took our passports. Do you understand what that means? We are stuck here, and my cards are dead. Your cards are dead. How are we going to pay the hotel bill? How are we going to eat?" "I will fix it," Dante stammered. "I will call Monique again. I will make her authorize it. She is probably just mad about the house. I can talk her down. She always caves. She is weak." "Weak," Jessica spat. "She just stranded us in the Middle East with no money and no ID. She does not sound weak to me. She sounds like the only person in your family with a brain." "You are useless, Dante. I should have never listened to you." I listened to them bicker as the taxi wove through traffic. The love, the partnership, the golden future they had posted about on Instagram just hours ago had evaporated the moment the comfort was stripped away. Jessica did not love him. She loved the access he promised. And now that the access was denied, she was looking at him with pure hatred. Zuri looked at me and crunched another piece of popcorn. "Phase 1 is complete, Mom," she said calmly. "They are isolated, they are scared, and they are turning on each other." I nodded, taking a sip of my drink. "Let them get back to the hotel," I said. "Let them try to order room service and realize they cannot even afford a bottle of water. That is when the real breaking point happens." My phone buzzed again. Another text from Dante. "Please pick up." They took our passports. "Monique, I am scared." I looked at the message, and then I looked at the empty space on my finger where my grandmother's ring used to be. I deleted the message without replying. Fear was a good teacher, and Dante had a lot of catching up to do. While Dante and Jessica were imploding in a taxi in the middle of the desert, my mother was about to experience the most humiliating moment of her life back in Atlanta. The digital simulation Zuri had built was perfect, but it was designed to fail at the exact moment it would cause the most damage. The hospital billing system, which had tentatively accepted Dante's fraudulent transfer code on Saturday, finally completed its verification cycle on Monday afternoon. The result was not just a decline. It was a hard rejection flagged for insufficient funds and suspicious activity. I watched the security feed from my mother's hospital room. The door opened and the same administrator who had threatened to kick us out before walked in. But this time she did not have security guards with her. She had a wheelchair and two nurses who were already stripping the bed. Mrs. Brooks, the administrator, said, her voice devoid of any sympathy. The wire transfer your son authorized has returned as invalid. In fact, the bank has flagged the account as non-existent. We have been more than patient, but since you have no insurance and no valid payment method, we must discharge you immediately. My mother looked up from her magazine, her face pale. Discharge me, she stammered. But I am sick, my heart. I am waiting for surgery. Your vitals are stable for now, the administrator said, checking a clipboard. You are not in immediate critical distress. We have arranged for a transport van to take you to the public clinic downtown or to your home, but you cannot stay in this private suite. Please get into the wheelchair. I watched my mother scramble for her phone. Her hands were shaking so hard she dropped it on the sheets twice. She dialed my number first. I knew she would. When the world breaks, she always expects me to be the glue. I let it ring 3 times before answering. I put it on speaker so Zuri could hear. Monique, my mother, screamed into the phone, hysterical tears choking her words. They are kicking me out. They are putting me on the street. That lady said Dante's money did not go through. You have to come down here. You have to bring your card. I know you have savings, Monique. Stop playing games and come save your mother. I took a slow sip of my tea. The warmth of the ceramic mug felt grounding against my cold fingers. I cannot do that, Mom, I said, my voice steady and calm. What do you mean you cannot? Beatrice shrieked. I am your mother. I gave you life. And you gave Dante my house, I replied, cutting her off. You signed the deed over to him yesterday, remember? You said he had vision. You said he was going to buy you a villa in Dubai. Well, Mom, if he is rich enough to buy a villa, he is rich enough to pay your hospital bill. But he is not answering, Beatrice sobbed. Monique, please. I made a mistake. Just pay them. We can sort it out later. There is nothing to sort out, I said. I do not have the money because Dante stole it. And I do not have a house because you gave it away. You bet on the wrong child, Mom. Now you have to collect your winnings from him. Monique, do not hang up on me, Beatrice pleaded, her voice turning into a wail. Do not leave me here. Call Dante, I said. He is the favorite. Let him fix it. I hung up the phone and placed it face down on the table. Zuri reached out and squeezed my hand. I did not cry. I had cried enough over that woman. Now I just watched the screen. On the video feed, I saw my mother dialing frantically. She called Dante once, twice, 3 times. On the other half of our screen, we could see the log from Dante's phone. He was currently in the hotel lobby screaming at a receptionist about his declined cards, while Jessica stood nearby throwing a tantrum. His phone was buzzing in his pocket. We saw him pull it out, look at the screen, see the name Mom, and aggressively decline the call. He shoved the phone back into his pocket without a second thought. Back in the hospital room, my mother slowly lowered the phone from her ear. The nurses were piling her clothes into plastic bags. The administrator was tapping her foot, waiting. Beatrice looked at the dark screen of her phone, and then she looked around the empty room. For the first time in her life, the reality of her choices hit her. Her golden child had abandoned her, and the daughter she had sacrificed was finally gone. She slumped into the wheelchair, a small broken woman, realizing that she was completely and utterly alone. It was 3 in the morning in Dubai when the hammer finally dropped. Back in Atlanta, I was sitting in my living room with Zuri, watching the live feed from the hotel room security camera that she had compromised hours ago. The suite at the Burj Al Arab was dark and silent, filled only with the soft hum of the air conditioning and the rhythmic breathing of 2 people who thought they had gotten away with it. Dante and Jessica were sleeping in thread-count sheets that cost more than my monthly mortgage payment, oblivious to the fact that the hallway outside their door was filling up with armed men. Zuri nudged me and pointed to the data stream on her laptop. The GPS markers we had been tracking all day had converged. The icons labeled Financial Crimes Division and Special Tactics Unit were now stationary directly outside room 402. Watch this, Zuri whispered, her voice filled with a cold anticipation. On the screen, the heavy mahogany door to the suite did not open with a polite knock. It exploded inward, with a deafening crash that shook the camera lens. Dante scrambled up in bed, screaming a high-pitched sound of pure terror. Jessica bolted upright, clutching the silk duvet to her chest, her eyes wide and blinded by the tactical strobe lights cutting through the darkness. "Police, get down on the ground. Hands where we can see them." The voices were not asking. They were barking orders in English and Arabic, overlapping in a chaotic wall of sound. Men in black tactical gear swarmed the room. These were not the polite hotel security guards or the regular beat cops who had taken their passports earlier. These were the wolves. They wore balaclavas and carried automatic rifles with laser sights that danced across the room, landing on Dante's chest and Jessica's forehead. Dante threw his hands up, tears already streaming down his face. "Don't shoot. Please don't shoot. It is just a misunderstanding. We will pay the bill. I swear we will pay the bill." He still thought this was about the unpaid hotel room. He still thought this was about a declined credit card. He had no idea of the magnitude of the storm he was standing in. "Get on the floor. Now." An officer grabbed Dante by the shoulder of his expensive silk pajamas and threw him onto the plush carpet. I watched my brother, the golden child who had never faced a consequence in his life, face plant into the floor with a heavy thud. He was sobbing now, loud, jagged gasps for air. Jessica was fighting. She was slapping at the hands reaching for her, kicking out with her legs. "Get off me!" she shrieked. "You cannot touch me. I am an American. Call the embassy." An officer pinned her arms behind her back, and I heard the distinct metallic click of handcuffs ratcheting tight. They dragged her off the bed and forced her to her knees beside Dante. The team leader stepped forward. He was not wearing tactical gear. He was wearing a sharp gray suit and holding a tablet. He looked down at them with the dispassionate stare of a man who hunted monsters for a living. "Dante Brooks and Jessica Vance." The man said, his voice calm but terrifyingly loud in the sudden silence. "You are under arrest." "For what?" Dante cried, his face pressed against the rug. "For a hotel bill. My sister has the money. Call my sister." "You are not under arrest for debt," the man said, scrolling through his tablet. "You are under arrest for violation of the International Anti-Money Laundering and Counter-Terrorism Financing Act." The room went deadly silent. Even Jessica stopped struggling. "Terrorism," Jessica whispered, her voice trembling. "What are you talking about?" "We are influencers. We are investing in real estate." "Exactly," the man said. "We have tracked a deed transfer for a property in Atlanta, Georgia, initiated yesterday. That asset was immediately leveraged against a high-risk shadow account known for moving funds for sanctioned organizations." I looked at Zuri. She gave me a small thumbs up. Her trap was perfect. The deed my mother had signed, the deed that was supposed to make them rich, had been the final nail in their coffin. By accepting the house, Jessica had unknowingly claimed ownership of a digital asset that Zuri had painted with the darkest brush possible. "That is a lie," Jessica screamed, trying to twist around to face him. "That house was a gift. It is my property. And that is why you are going to prison," the man said, signaling his team to move them. "Using real estate to layer illegal funds is a federal crime. We have seized your accounts, we have seized your passports, and now we are seizing you." They hauled Dante up first. He was dead weight, his legs refusing to work. He looked at the camera one last time, his eyes wild and empty, and for a second I wondered if he knew I was watching. I wondered if he felt my gaze. Then they grabbed Jessica. As they dragged her toward the ruined door, her composure finally snapped completely. The veneer of the wealthy sophisticate crumbled, leaving only a terrified, entitled girl. "You cannot do this," she screamed, thrashing against the officers, her voice reaching a pitch that distorted the audio feed. "I am a white American citizen. I have rights. You cannot touch me. My father will sue this entire country. Let me go." The officer just pushed her forward, ignoring her threats as if she were nothing more than background noise. Her entitlement meant nothing here. Her skin color meant nothing here. In the face of the data Zuri had created, she was just another criminal caught in the web. I watched until the room was empty, until the only sound left was the wind blowing through the broken door. I took a deep breath and finally felt the knot in my chest loosen. They were gone. The nightmare was over, but my work was not done. I picked up my phone. It was time to answer that call from the Dubai police station. It was time to deliver the final blow. The interrogation room at the Dubai police headquarters was a stark contrast to the luxury suite Dante had been sleeping in an hour ago. It was a small, windowless box painted a sterile gray that smelled of industrial cleaner and fear. Through the hacked security feed, Zuri and I watched my brother sitting at a metal table, his hands cuffed to a bar on the floor. He was shivering uncontrollably. The silk pajamas he had thought were so stylish now looked ridiculous, stained with sweat and wrinkled from the rough handling of the arrest. The door opened and the lead investigator walked in. He was a man who wasted no time. He carried a thick file under his arm and sat down opposite Dante, placing a digital recorder on the table between them. "Please talk to me," Dante begged, his voice cracking. "This is a mistake. My girlfriend has the money. We are wealthy investors. Check the accounts. There is almost $200,000 in there." The investigator looked at Dante with a mixture of pity and professional boredom. He opened the file and slid a single sheet of paper across the cold metal table. "Mr. Brooks," the investigator said, his English precise and clipped. "We have checked the accounts. We have checked them very thoroughly. And that is why you are here." Dante looked at the paper. It was a bank statement, but it was covered in red ink. "I do not understand," Dante stammered. "It says negative." The investigator leaned forward, clasping his hands. "You keep insisting that you transferred funds from your sister in the United States. You keep insisting that you are spending your own capital. But the reality, Mr. Brooks, is that the wire transfer you initiated on Saturday never happened." "What do you mean it never happened?" Dante whispered. "I saw it on my phone. It said transfer complete." "What you saw was a simulation," the investigator stated flatly. "Our cyber forensics team, along with the FBI, has determined that the banking interface on your device was a mirror. The money never left the United States. It never left your sister's control. The $400,000 you thought you had access to does not exist." Dante blinked rapidly, his brain struggling to process the information. "But we spent money. We paid for the flight. We paid for the suite. We bought gold stakes. If the money was not real, how did the cards work?" "That is the unfortunate part for Ms. Vance," the investigator said, pointing to the door where Jessica was being held in the next room. "The cards you were using were not debit cards linked to cash. They were high-interest credit instruments. Specifically, they were emergency overdraft facilities linked to Ms. Vance's identity." I watched Dante's face as the realization hit him. Zuri had not just blocked the money. She had forced them to spend money they did not have. "Every time you swiped that card expecting to use your sister's savings, you were actually taking out a loan," the investigator explained. "A loan with a 40% interest rate and immediate repayment terms. You were spending on credit, Mr. Brooks. And because you have no assets to back it up, that is called fraud." "But Jessica," Dante said, his voice trembling. "Jessica is rich. She can pay it off." The investigator laughed, a dry sound that echoed in the small room. "Ms. Vance is not rich. In fact, according to this report, her credit rating in the United States is abysmal. And as of this morning, thanks to your spending spree over the last 48 hours, she currently owes the Royal Bank of Dubai exactly $200,000. $200,000? Dante gasped. "Plus penalties for the bounced check at the car dealership," the investigator added. "And since the collateral she offered was a property she obtained through wire fraud, the bank has frozen everything. She is bankrupt, Mr. Brooks. And so are you." Dante slumped back in his chair, the metal cuffs clanking against the floor. The arrogance was gone. The bravado was gone. He was just a 30-year-old man who had stolen from his family and ended up with nothing but a mountain of debt in a foreign country. "So I have no money." Dante whispered, tears leaking from his eyes. You have no money, the investigator confirmed, closing the file. You have no lawyer. And since you assisted Ms. Vance in racking up this debt under false pretenses, you are considered an accomplice to grand larceny and international banking fraud. You are not an investor, Mr. Brooks. You are a broke criminal. And you are going to be here for a very long time. I watched my brother put his head on the table and sob. He had wanted to be a millionaire so badly. He had wanted the fast life. Well, he had gotten it. He had spent $200,000 in 2 days, and now the bill had finally come due. I sat in the darkness of my living room, with the phone resting on the coffee table like a loaded gun. The silence in the house was absolute, but inside my head, the noise was deafening. Zuri was asleep on the sofa beside me, curled up in a blanket, exhausted from 2 days of running an international cyber operation. But when the phone finally rang, her eyes snapped open instantly. It was a restricted number. The country code was 971. Dubai. I did not pick it up on the first ring. I let it ring twice, then 3 times. I wanted him to sweat. I wanted him to wonder if I had finally done what he did to me and blocked his number. On the 4th ring, I reached out and tapped the speaker button. Hello? I said, my voice calm and devoid of sleep. Monique. Oh God, Monique, please tell me you are there. The voice on the other end was unrecognizable. It was high-pitched, hysterical, and broken by jagged sobbing. It sounded like a child who had woken up in a nightmare, but this was a 30-year-old man who had woken up in a reality he had created. Who is this? I asked, taking a slow sip of my herbal tea. It is Dante. It is your brother. Monique, you have to help me. You have to get me out of here. I looked at Zuri. She sat up and leaned toward the phone, her face impassive. We could hear shouting in the background in Arabic and the heavy metallic clang of doors being slammed. Where are you, Dante? I asked, knowing exactly where he was. I am in jail, Monique. I am in a holding cell. It smells like bleach and vomit. They took my clothes. They took my shoes. Monique, please listen to me. Jessica turned on me. She told them everything was my idea. She told them I stole her identity. She told them I forced her to sign the papers for the house. I took another sip of tea. That sounds complicated, Dante. Complicated. Monique, they are talking about 20 years. The investigator said I am looking at charges for grand larceny and fraud, and Monique, one of the guards, said they have strict laws here. He said they might chop my hand off for stealing. I need my hands, Monique. Please, I am scared. I am so scared. He began to hyperventilate, the sound rasping harshly through the speaker. Calm down, Dante, I said coldly. What do you want me to do? You have to tell them it was a gift. He screamed, his voice cracking. You have to call the embassy or the police or whoever and tell them that you gave me the money. Tell them you authorized the transfer. Tell them the house was a gift to Mom and she gave it to me legally. If you say it was authorized, then it is not fraud. It is just a misunderstanding. Please, Monique, just lie for me. Just this one time. Save my life. I looked at the steam rising from my cup. I thought about the moment the hospital administrator told me to leave. I thought about the empty safe in my closet. I thought about my mother signing the deed on an iPad while calling me selfish. Dante, I said slowly, making sure every word was clear. I do not know what you are talking about. What? What do you mean? He stammered. I mean I cannot tell them I gave you money because I do not have any money. I said, my voice smooth as silk. You told me yourself, Dante. I am just a worker bee. I am broke. Remember, you emptied my accounts. The bank says I have $0. How could I possibly give you $200,000 if I have nothing? No, 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 Dante moaned. Don't do this. Monique, please. The money is there. I saw it. Just tell them it is yours. I cannot lie to the police, Dante. I continued, enjoying the way his breathing hitched. That would be a crime. And besides, you said you were a wealthy investor. You said you were making big moves. Surely a rich man like you can hire a lawyer to explain this. Monique? They are going to lock me away, he screamed, and this time it was a primal sound, a shriek of pure terror that made the hair on my arms stand up. I am your brother. We are blood. Blood does not steal from blood, Dante, I whispered. Blood does not leave his mother to die in a charity ward because he wanted to eat gold steaks. You wanted to be the man of the house. You wanted to take everything. Well, you took the credit. Now you have to take the credit for the crime, too. Monique, wait. Wait. I am sorry. I will pay you back. I will do anything. I looked at Zuri. She reached out and hovered her finger over the end call button. I have to go now, Dante, I said. I have to go to work. I have to earn a living. Unlike you, I do not have a rich sister to bail me out. No. Monique, no. Don't you dare hang up. Don't you dare. Goodbye, Dante. I tapped the button. The screaming cut off, instantly replaced by the heavy silence of the Atlanta night. I set the phone down. My hand was steady. Zuri picked up the bowl of popcorn and offered it to me. I took a handful. It was the best popcorn I had ever tasted. He had screamed for help. But for the first time in my life, I finally realized that it was not my job to answer. The 48 hours following my brother's frantic phone call were quiet, but heavy with the calm before the storm. I knew that the ripples of what happened in Dubai would eventually crash onto my doorstep in Atlanta, and on Wednesday morning, they finally arrived in the form of a sleek black town car that pulled into my driveway. It was not the police, and it was not the FBI. It was two people who looked like they owned the police and the FBI. Mr. and Mrs. Vance stepped out of the vehicle wearing matching expressions of disdain and suits that cost more than my entire wardrobe. Jessica's parents were old money, the kind of people who believed that laws were merely suggestions for the poor. They did not knock on my door. They banged on it with the entitlement of landlords coming to evict a tenant. I opened the door holding my mug of tea, my posture relaxed. I had been expecting them. You must be the sister, Mr. Vance spat without preamble, pushing past me into my own hallway. His wife followed, clutching a crocodile skin handbag like a shield. You have exactly 5 minutes to explain why my daughter is sitting in a foreign prison cell before I unleash a legal team that will turn your life into dust. I closed the door slowly and turned to face them. I did not offer them a seat. I did not offer them water. I simply leaned against the wall and looked them over. Your daughter is in prison because she committed international wire fraud. I said, my voice steady. She tried to launder money through a property she stole from my mother. Stole? Mrs. Vance scoffed, her voice shrill. Jessica does not need to steal from your family. We give her everything she wants. This is a setup. My daughter told us everything on the phone. She said you and your delinquent brother set her up. She said you hacked her accounts. I laughed softly. That is a very creative story, but unfortunately for Jessica, facts are stubborn things. Mr. Vance stepped forward, his face reddening. Listen to me, you little nobody. We have friends in the State Department. We have friends in the Dubai consulate. We are going to get Jessica out, and then we are going to sue you for defamation, for emotional distress, and for every penny you will ever earn. We will bury you under so many lawsuits that your grandchildren will be born in debt. I watched him vent his rage, waiting for him to finish. He was used to intimidation working. He was used to people cowering. But he did not know that I had spent my career taking down white-collar criminals exactly like him. Are you done? I asked. Good. Now let me show you something. I pulled out my phone and tapped the screen. I did not play the video of the arrest. I played the recording Zuri had captured from the hospital room the day before the raid. The audio was crystal clear. Jessica's voice filled the entryway, sharp and cruel. Just sign the damn paper, Mama B. Stop asking questions, you stupid old woman. We need the collateral. If you don't sign it, Dante is going to leave you to rot in this hospital. Mrs. Vance gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Mr. Vance froze, his eyes widening. I let the recording play to the end where Jessica laughed about putting my mother in a cheap nursing home once they got the money. That is elder abuse, I stated, keeping my eyes locked on Mr. Vance. That is coercion. That is fraud. And in the state of Georgia, That is a felony that carries a mandatory minimum sentence. Now you might be able to pull strings in Dubai. You might be able to pay off a few officials to get her deported back here instead of rotting in a desert prison. But if she comes back here, I will be waiting with this recording." The room went silent. The arrogance evaporated from Mr. Vance's posture, replaced by the cold calculation of a businessman, realizing he had lost the deal. He knew that a recording like that would not only send his daughter to prison in the U.S., but it would destroy their social standing. The Vances were on charity boards. They were pillars of the community. A scandal involving abusing a sick elderly black woman for her home would be social suicide. "What do you want?" Mr. Vance asked, his voice low and defeated. "I want the $200,000 my brother stole from me," I said. "I want it paid in full today, and I want an additional $50,000 for the legal fees and the medical bills for my mother." "That is extortion," Mrs. Vance whispered. "No, that is a settlement," I corrected. "You pay me what I am owed, and I will agree not to press charges regarding the house theft here in America. I will hand over the recording and delete my copies. You can deal with the Dubai mess however you want, but when she comes home, she starts with a clean slate from me." Mr. Vance looked at his wife. She nodded imperceptibly. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a checkbook. He did not argue. He did not threaten. He wrote the check for $250,000, his hand shaking slightly. He ripped it out and handed it to me. "You are a cold woman," Mr. Vance said as they turned to leave. I looked at the check. It was more money than I had ever seen in one place. "I learned from the best," I replied. They walked out to their car, defeated by the truth they could not buy their way out of. I held the paper in my hand, feeling the weight of it. It was not just money, it was justice. And it was time to close the final chapter. With the check from the Vance family safely deposited and cleared, my bank account looked healthier than it ever had, but my soul felt heavy. I sat in the office of my family attorney, Mr. Jenkins, watching him review the stack of documents Zuri had compiled. The legal fallout from the Dubai operation was swift and brutal. Because the transfer of the house deed to Jessica had been flagged as part of an international money laundering scheme, the federal government had voided the transaction entirely. It was as if the sale had never happened. "Legally, the property has reverted to your mother," Mr. Jenkins said, sliding the heavy paper across the mahogany desk. "Beatrice Brooks is once again the sole owner of the estate." I looked at the deed. It was the piece of paper that had started this entire war. My mother had tried to weaponize it to hurt me, and now it had boomeranged back to her. "However," Mr. Jenkins continued, looking over his glasses, "there is a complication. The hospital is suing for the unpaid bills. The loan sharks who visited your house are technically still owed their principal, even if they are too scared of the federal investigation to collect right now. Your mother is asset-rich but cash-poor. She is insolvent, Monique." I nodded slowly. I knew this. I had calculated this down to the penny. "That is why we are filing this," I said, handing him a blue folder. "It is a petition for emergency conservatorship." Mr. Jenkins opened the folder and looked at the evidence. It contained the video of my mother signing the deed on the iPad while talking about villas in Dubai. It contained the transcripts of her conversations with Jessica, where she agreed to defraud the hospital. It contained a forensic accounting of her finances, showing she had zero liquidity and a high susceptibility to elder financial abuse. She tried to sell her only shelter to a woman she barely knew, for a promise that did not exist, I said, my voice flat. She proved she is mentally incompetent to manage her own affairs. If she keeps control of that house, she will lose it in a month. Or worse, she will give it to Dante the moment he lands on U.S. soil. Mr. Jenkins nodded solemnly. "The evidence is overwhelming. The court will grant it. You will have full legal authority over her assets and her living arrangements. But Monique, you know what this means. If you become her conservator, you decide where she lives." I stood up and smoothed my skirt. "I know exactly where she is going." 2 hours later, I pulled up to the hospital discharge bay. My mother was waiting in a wheelchair with her small bag of belongings on her lap. When she saw my car, she smiled. It was a weak, tentative smile, but it was there. She thought she had won. She thought that because the house was back in her name, everything would go back to normal. She thought I was there to take her home to her garden and her comfortable bed. I got out and opened the passenger door. She struggled into the seat, sighing as she settled in. "Oh, thank God," she murmured, closing her eyes. "That hospital food was terrible. I cannot wait to sleep in my own bed. Monique, stop at the grocery store on the way. I want to make a pot roast tonight. Maybe we can call Dante later and see if he is okay. I am sure this is all just a big misunderstanding." I started the car and pulled out into traffic. I did not turn left toward our neighborhood. I turned right toward the highway. "We are not going to the grocery store, Mom," I said, keeping my eyes on the road. "And we are not going home." Beatrice's eyes snapped open. "What are you talking about? Take me home immediately." "You cannot go home," I said calmly. "The utilities have been shut off because you gave the money to Dante. The property taxes are due next week and you have $0. And frankly, Mom, you are not safe there. You proved that when you tried to sell it to a stranger on an iPad." "I did not sell it," she snapped, her voice rising. "I was investing. It was a business deal. It was a scam, Mom," I said, cutting her off. "And you fell for it because you are greedy and you blindly trust the wrong people." Today a judge agreed with me. "As of 1 hour ago, I am your legal conservator. I control the house, I control your pension, and I control where you live." She stared at me, her mouth working silently as she tried to process the shift in power. "You took my rights away. I saved you from yourself," I corrected her. "If I let you go back to that house, you would sign it over to Dante the second he asked. I cannot let you destroy the only legacy this family has left." I pulled the car into the driveway of a long brick building. It was clean but stark. There were no manicured gardens. There was no pool. It was the Pinecrest Assisted Living Facility. It was a state-subsidized home for seniors with limited means. It smelled of industrial cleaner and boiled cabbage. "What is this place?" Beatrice whispered, looking out the window in horror. "This is where you live now," I said, putting the car in park. "I used your pension to pay for a semi-private room. It is safe. They have nurses. And they have strict rules about visitors. Con artists cannot just walk in here with an iPad. You are putting me in a home," she screamed, clutching the dashboard. "You are dumping me. I have a house. I have a 4-bedroom house. You have a building, Mom," I said, turning to look at her. "A home is where people take care of each other. You stopped taking care of me a long time ago. You chose Dante. You chose the fantasy. This is the reality." I got out and signaled for the orderlies to come help her. They lifted her gently from the car into a wheelchair. She was crying now, loud heaving sobs that shook her thin frame. She reached out for me, her hand grasping at my sleeve. "Monique, please," she begged. "I am sorry. I am so sorry. Don't leave me here." I gently unhooked her fingers from my jacket. "I will visit on Sundays," I said, "and I will make sure the house is still standing. But I am done paying for your mistakes, Mom. You wanted someone to take care of you. Now the state will." I watched them wheel her through the sliding glass doors. She looked small and defeated, surrounded by strangers. I got back into my car and sat there for a moment in the silence. I felt a tear roll down my cheek, but I wiped it away quickly. I had saved the house. I had saved the legacy. But looking at the brick walls of the nursing home, I knew I had lost my mother forever. And strangely, I was okay with that. The rain in Atlanta was relentless that afternoon, washing away the dust of the city, but it could not wash away the sins of the past week. I sat in my car, parked in the waiting lot of the international terminal with the engine idling. I was not there to welcome a brother home. I was there to witness the final act of a tragedy he had written himself. The deal with the Vance family had been specific. They used their diplomatic connections to have both Jessica and Dante deported immediately, rather than facing trial in the UAE. They wanted their daughter home to rehabilitate her image. But for Dante, there was no rehabilitation waiting. There was only the consequence of the digital trail Zuri and I had handed to the FBI. He walked out of the terminal doors flanked by 2 immigration officers. He looked smaller than I remembered. The swagger was gone. His designer clothes were rumpled and stained from days in a holding cell. He looked around frantically, his eyes darting back and forth, searching for a friendly face. He was probably expecting Mom. He was probably expecting the warm embrace of the enabler who had protected him his entire life. He did not know she was sitting in a common room at Pinecrest, staring at a wall, wondering why her calls were not going through. Instead of a hug, he was met by 3 officers from the Atlanta Police Department and a federal agent. I watched through the rain-streaked glass as they stepped forward. I saw the color drain from Dante's face. He tried to step back, but the immigration officer held him firm. The lead detective spoke to him. I could not hear the words, but I knew what they were. "You are under arrest for identity theft, wire fraud, and grand larceny." The handcuffs came out. Not the gold bracelets he wanted to wear, but cold steel. He began to struggle. It was a pathetic flailing motion, the last gasp of a man who realized the world had finally stopped bending to his will. And then he saw me. I do not know how he spotted my car through the crowd and the rain. Maybe he felt my gaze. Maybe he knew deep down that I would be there to see it end. His eyes locked onto mine, and for a second time, stood still. I saw hope flare in his chest. A desperate, delusional hope. He thought I was there to bail him out. He thought I was there to explain it all away like I had done for his parking tickets, and his failed classes, and his petty debts for 30 years. He thought the sister he called a worker bee was there to sting his enemies for him. Monique. I saw his mouth form the name. He lunged toward the car, dragging the officers with him. "Monique, help me. Tell them. Tell them it is a mistake. I am sorry, Mo. I am sorry." His voice was muffled by the glass and the distance, but the desperation cut through the air. People on the sidewalk stopped to stare at the scene. A handsome young man in dirty, expensive clothes begging a woman in a luxury sedan for salvation. But I looked at him and I felt nothing. The anger was gone. The sadness was gone. There was only a hollow silence where my love for him used to be. He had stolen my mother's health. He had stolen my grandmother's legacy. He had tried to break me. And now he wanted me to be his shield one last time. I watched the officers grab his arms and force him toward the waiting cruiser. He was fighting them, twisting his body, trying to keep his eyes on me. "Monique, please. Don't leave me. Mom needs me." That was the final insult. Using Mom's name after he left her to be evicted from a hospital bed. I did not wave. I did not smile. I simply reached out and pressed the button on the door panel. The tinted window slid up smoothly, sealing me inside my quiet, warm world. His screaming face disappeared behind the black glass. The sound of his begging was cut off, replaced by the soft hum of the climate control. I shifted the car into drive and pulled away from the curb, merging into the flow of traffic. I did not look in the rearview mirror. There was no point. The past was behind me in handcuffs. The future was ahead of me, waiting at home with a 10-year-old girl who was the true genius of this family. I turned on the radio and let the music fill the space where my brother used to exist. The morning after Dante was taken away in handcuffs, the sun finally broke through the clouds over Atlanta. It felt symbolic, as if the storm had literally been carried away in the back of that police cruiser. I sat at the kitchen table in the house that had caused so much pain, watching Zuri finish her bowl of cereal. Her laptop was open next to her juice glass, humming with the quiet power of a machine that had toppled a criminal scheme. She wiped her mouth with the back of her hand and turned the screen toward me. "It is time, Mom," she said simply. She did not need to explain what she meant. We had waited until the Vance family check cleared. We had waited until Dante was processed into the federal system. Now it was time to close the loop. Zuri typed a rapid sequence of commands. On the screen, the complex web of the sandbox simulation began to dismantle itself. The shadow servers were wiped clean. The fake routing numbers dissolved. And then, with one final keystroke, the digital dam broke. My phone buzzed with a notification from my Real Bank app. I opened it and let out a breath that shook my entire body. My savings were back. Every single cent of the $42,000 was there. But right next to it was the deposit from the Vance family. $250,000. The balance on the screen was a number I had never imagined seeing in my lifetime. It was not just money, it was vindication. It was the price of my brother's betrayal and the cost of my silence paid in full. But the money was not the only reward. Later that afternoon, I drove Zuri to a nondescript glass building in downtown Atlanta. It was the headquarters of CyberSec, the firm I often contracted with for my forensic analysis work. I had called David, the senior director of threat intelligence, and told him I had something he needed to see. He was expecting a file transfer. He was not expecting a 10-year-old girl in denim overalls. We sat in his office surrounded by servers that cost more than my car. David looked at the code Zuri had used to build the escrow trap. He looked at the way she had exploited the banking API to create the ghost transaction. He was silent for a long time. Then he took off his glasses and looked at Zuri, with a reverence usually reserved for visiting dignitaries. "You found a 0-day vulnerability in the International Swift Exchange Protocol," David said, his voice hushed. "We have teams of PhDs who have been looking for a backdoor like this for 5 years, and you wrote it in your bedroom." "I just followed the logic," Zuri shrugged. "The system assumes the user is honest. I just assumed the user was a thief." David laughed, shaking his head. "Monique, this girl is dangerous, and she is brilliant. We cannot hire her yet because of child labor laws, but I want to offer her an honorary fellowship, full access to our learning lab, mentorship from our white hat hackers. And when she turns 16, she has a full ride scholarship waiting for her." I looked at my daughter, who was beaming for the first time in weeks. She had not just saved us, she had secured her own future. We left the office and drove straight to a real estate agency. I could not stay in the old house anymore. The memories of my mother's betrayal and Dante's theft were soaked into the floorboards. I wanted a fresh start. We found it in a modern gated community on the north side of the city. It was a beautiful house with floor-to-ceiling windows, a dedicated server room for Zuri, and a security system that rivaled the Pentagon. When we sat down at the closing table, the title agent looked at the check I had brought. It was a cashier's check for the full amount. No mortgage, no banks. "And how should we title the deed?" the agent asked, pen hovering over the paper. I looked at Zuri. She was playing a game on her phone, unbothered by the weight of the moment. I thought about my mother signing away our legacy on an iPad because she trusted a liar. I thought about the cycle of financial abuse that had plagued the women in my family for generations. "It stopped today." "Put it in a trust," I said firmly. "The Zuri Brooks Revocable Trust." The agent looked surprised. "You are putting the house in your daughter's name." "I am," I smiled, signing the document. "She earned it. And besides, I know for a fact that she is the only person in this family who knows how to keep a secret." We walked out of that office not just as homeowners, but as a team that the world had tried to break and failed. We were untouchable. The sunset over our new patio is my favorite time of day. It paints the sky in shades of gold and violet colors that remind me of peace. I sat there last night watching Zuri in the yard. She was not hunched over a laptop fighting cyber criminals. She was not building digital traps to catch thieves. She was just playing with her new puppy, a golden retriever she named Justice. It has been 6 months since the nightmare ended, and the silence in our lives is no longer empty. It is full of promise. The tranquility was broken by the ringing of my phone on the patio table. I knew who it was before I looked. It was Sunday evening. It was time for the weekly call from Pinecrest. "My mother Beatrice is physically healthy. The doctors say her heart is stable, but her spirit is restless. She hates the schedule, she hates the food, but mostly, she hates that I am not there to be her emotional punching bag anymore." "Monique," she said, her voice thin and wheedling coming through the speaker. The nurse tells me you bought a big house, a mansion. Surely you have a guest room for your mother. I am lonely here, baby. I want to come home. I looked at the glass walls of my sanctuary. I looked at the security system that Zuri had customized. I looked at the peace we had built from the ashes of their betrayal. I am sorry, Mom, I said gently. But you are home. Pinecrest is where you are safe. You are being cruel. She snapped, the old venom leaking back into her tone. You are punishing me. I made a mistake, Monique. Everyone makes mistakes. Dante tricked me. Dante did not trick you. I said, my voice steady and final. Dante offered you a fantasy, and you took it because you wanted to believe I was holding you back. You signed that deed because you trusted him more than you respected me. But I am your mother, she wept. And Zuri is my daughter, I replied. This house is not for me, Mom. It is for her. And I cannot bring the past into her future. You made your choice when you put your fingerprint on that screen. You chose the son who promised you the world and left you with nothing. I am just the daughter who picked up the pieces. I hung up the phone. I did not block the number, but I stopped the guilt from taking root in my chest. Dante is currently serving his sentence in a federal facility 3 states away. He sends letters sometimes asking for money for the commissary. I do not open them. I put them directly into the shredder. It is funny how life works. My brother tried to drain my accounts to destroy my life. He wanted to steal my past. But in his greed, he accidentally unlocked my daughter's future. If he had never tried to rob us, Zuri never would have built that trap. She never would have been discovered by the head of Cybersec. His betrayal was the catalyst for her success. I walked out into the grass and Zuri looked up at me smiling. She looked free. I used to think family was blood. I used to think it was obligation and Sunday dinners and enduring abuse because you share a last name. Now I know the truth. Family is not about whose DNA you share. It is about who stands beside you when the walls are falling down. It is about loyalty, and sometimes you have to prune the family tree to let the sunlight reach the new branches. I lost a brother and a mother that week, but I gained a life that is truly mine. Have you ever had to be the villain in someone else's story just to be the hero in your child's life? Have you ever had to cut off a family member to save your sanity? Tell me your story in the comments below. I read every single one, and if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about justice, resilience, and the power of standing your ground. My name is Monique, and this is my new legacy. This story serves as a powerful reminder that family is defined by loyalty and respect, not just by shared DNA. Monique's journey illustrates the devastating cost of enabling toxic behavior and the immense courage required to break generational cycles of financial abuse. We learn that setting boundaries with relatives isn't an act of cruelty, but a necessary act of self-preservation. When trust is repeatedly broken, walking away becomes the only path to protecting one's peace and future. Ultimately, true empowerment comes from realizing that you are not responsible for saving people who are determined to drown, and that your dignity is worth far more than their approval. If you have ever had to become the villain in your family's story just to save your own sanity, hit that like button, subscribe, and tell us how you broke the cycle in the comments below.